Good afternoon and welcome back to My Harlem Portraits, the show that aims at shedding a light on the fundamental contributions of African Americans to the building of this country and on Black excellence. Today we have three very special guests. They are the directors of a fantastic documentary that is having its world premiere at TRIBECA Festival 2023, titled Breaking the News, produced by DIANE QUON. Welcome to My Harlem Portrait and congratulations for having the world premiere at TRIBECA.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
So I would like to, each one of you introduce herself briefly. Let's start with Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Courtney. I'm one of the directors of Breaking the News, and I am based in Los Angeles.
Thank you. Princess?
Hi, I'm Princess A. Hairston, and I'm one of the co-directors, co-producers, and cinematographer, and I am based in New York.
And Chelsea?
Hi, I'm Chelsea Hernandez, and I am one of the co-directors based in Austin, Texas.
Okay. You're all winning, award-winning producers and directors. I wanted to tell more about you, but we are gonna go straight to the movie. And one thing that is very interesting for me also is that you're all members of New York Women in Film and TV, and I'm also a member of that. So I was very interested in seeing what you did because of that also. So the contest, let's say a little bit, it's Donald Trump is getting sworn as president. There are women marches all over against this. I was in the march in Washington the day before he was sworn in, because it was really a terrible thing that happened. And Emily Ramshaw, a journalist, decided that this was the moment to launch what she had in mind for a long time. And she launched the 19th, a digital news agency. It's named after the 19th Amendment, that gave women the right to vote. And it became the first nonprofit, nonpartisan news agency in the United States. Its mission is to focus on the impact of national politics and policy on women, specific omitted women, Black, LGBT, and so on. But by the time Emily and the co-founder, Amanda Zamora, had finally got the funds to officially launch their website, the pandemic hit. So, and everything changed in the whole world. So you came in at this point, and how did you ladies get the idea for this film? And how did the 19th respond to your pitching for this?
So I was the one who originally pitched the idea to Emily and Amanda. And that was back in February 2020. And at that time, the idea was just to follow them for about a year as their organization, as the 19th was following the presidential election, because I thought it would be really interesting to follow this group of reporters who were trying to buck the white male status quo, have them following this presidential election that featured Trump and had a lot of reporters that frankly were white men. So that was the pitch in February 2020. They took it to their very small staff at the time. There were only 6 or 7 people. And they agreed to let me start filming. I was going to go in March 2020 to film, and 2 days before I was going to leave, then the pandemic happened. So you know, as you said, everything changed. So then once that happened, I just started recording Zoom meetings, and I was very thankful to them for allowing me to do that. It was a very vulnerable and scary time for them and for everybody. But it was also incredibly interesting to be there when they were trying to figure out how to pivot. Then fast forward several months, and I went to film for the first time in person the day that they officially launched in August 2020. And it was that day that I decided that it could be actually a real film, and I was going to try and figure out how to make it happen. And I knew that I wanted, if I were going to make it happen, that I wanted to have a team of collaborators, and I wanted to model what the 19th was trying to do and build a group of diverse and inclusive and in an inclusive and equitable environment. I wanted to make that kind of a team as well. And so the day after the launch, I actually reached out to Chelsea Hernandez, for starters.
I had known about Emily Ramshaw when she was editor-in-chief at the Texas Tribune, and being based in Austin and growing up there, the Texas Tribune was a big news source for me, living there. And so I knew she was leaving the Tribune and starting something new, and I wanted to hear all about it. And when Heather approached me, I was totally in. You know, after the racial reckoning of 2020, I felt like I needed to make sure I was involved in projects that were telling these stories, and also that were stories that provided models or solutions or a sense of hope. You know, it was a very hopeless time that year, and I felt like this project was very hopeful, and I wanted to hopefully inspire audiences as well, showcasing the work that they were doing. I personally had gone to study broadcast journalism in college, and didn't really have the right support around me or encouragement, and ended up finding documentary film and going behind the camera. So journalism has always been something that I'm intrigued by and excited about. And then we kept going after Princess for a while to try to get her on board, and thankfully she was available and able to hop on board as well.
So tell us, Princess.
Yeah, definitely. Heather and Chelsea met with me and told me about the 19th News, told me about Emily Ramshaw and Aaron Haynes. I had no idea about the Texas Tribune, and really like knowing all the journalism that was happening there and the amazing work that Emily was doing there. So when they told me about this new venture, the 19th, and how it would be this new digital newsroom that was challenging the white male status quo and challenging the whole legacy newsroom model, and how they were including the voices that were often omitted in journalism, I was totally on board. You know, it was something I definitely wanted to be a part of. So I'm glad I joined the team.
Another thing I wanted to ask you is, why did you decide to free? It's unusual to have a group of 3 directors on a movie. What was the reason for that? And I'm going to ask Heather for that, because she's the one who started this. And also the other thing that I wanted to ask you is, each one of you follows a specific, followed a specific set of characters or a specific set of arguments. How did you organize that? Go ahead.
I always wanted to build a team of collaborators for this project. And after filming, you know, or recording months of these Zoom meetings with the 19th, while they were having these very difficult and important discussions around gender and racial equity, I knew that I needed to try and be doing what they were doing and building a more diverse and equitable team. And so that's why I started to reach out to Chelsea, and then she and I reached out to Princess, and our producer, DIANE, who is not able to be on this call, but she also was someone we wanted right away as well. So it was for that reason. And then also just logistically and geographically, we're all based in different parts of the country. I'm in Los Angeles, Chelsea's in Austin, Princess is in New York, DIANE's in Chicago. So because of COVID, it made sense for us to be to have a team that was spread around the country, because then we could film in those areas where we were closest to. In the early days, I did fly to Philly to film with Aaron, but, I had to quarantine for like a week before, so it was, anyway, logistically, it made sense as well. But the more important thing is that it was really to build a diverse team that could bring their own lived experiences to the filmmaking.
Thank you. Chelsea, how did you collectively pick your different characters?
So we spoke, we collaborated with the entire 19th staff and reporters very early on, making sure that people had permission for us to film with them, and just started, talking to people. I mean, it was really all remote at first. So we would get on Zoom meetings with reporters and chat with them, and kind of do casting, I guess, remotely. And we were also interested in covering the different topics that the 19th was covering. So LGBTQ plus issues, the economy, healthcare. And so we thankfully had the permission to film with our main protagonists, Aaron Haynes, Kate Sawson, Chabeli Carazana, and also Emily Zamora, or Emily Ramshaw and Amanda Zamora, who are the co-founders of the 19th as well. And we just started filming with them remotely. A lot of the tough conversations really early on were with Aaron Haynes and Emily and Amanda. And so it was important that we continue to follow their arc as well. And then film in person with people and find out where their stories were going.
It's a fantastic documentary. I loved it because it gives you a lot of information, and it's fundamental information. Like, I had no idea that it was the 19th that broke out the Brianna Taylor story, and that was a big thing. So, Princess, tell me about a little bit of that, because that was a very pivotal moment.
Yeah, I can speak to it from a creative standpoint on how we shaped that story. That was part of the early filming before I came on, but like Chelsea and Heather said, Erin was the first journalist at the 19th.
Yeah.
She was doing all the reporting. And when she pitched that story to them, it was just shocking that someone had been shot 8 times in their own home. And it had happened 2 months ago. No one had reported on it. And so Aaron had to complete that story that day. It was due with their partnerships before the 19th even launched their own site. And it just shows that how having someone in a newsroom like Aaron to pitch that story and fight for it to get it out there, that naturally probably would never have happened in a traditional newsroom. So that right there is meaningful in itself. And the fact that she wrote that article, put a lot of love, and was able to use some of her lived experience to really shape that story, how it resonated and how it actually catapulted the 19th in mainstream media through this very difficult article to write, but very factual and very necessary. And it just would not have happened without an organization, without a newsroom like the 19th. So it was pivotal. It was pivotal. We knew that scene always had to be in the film. That's the first story that we see the 19th come out with. And even the discussions around that article after it comes out internally within their newsroom, and the challenges that Aaron has to face as a Black woman in this newsroom, having to pitch these ideas as the only Black person. There's just still so much work to do because everyone has a level of programming that they need to break down to see that these stories are necessary to tell.
That's right.
And I want to add, Maria, you mentioned early on about what the 19th, named after the 19th Amendment. They also have an asterisk in their logo to stand for the women of color, Black women who were left out of the 19th Amendment. And so that story of Brianna Taylor was really important too, to showcase their reporting of making sure that they're thinking about the people who are being omitted from mainstream news. And Black women who are victims of police violence are not heard, are not seen as much as Black men. And so thinking about that asterisk and Erin Haynes, bringing her own lived experience to that reporting was really important for us to showcase what they were doing and the story of, how news needs to be told with the perspective of gender and race.
For me, this is very important because that's the main reason why I started this show. Because before moving to New York, I was working in European Parliament, and I was a press officer, and the three main committees I was in charge of were the Women Committee, the Environmental Committee, and the Agricultural Committee. So moving to Harlem and seeing all the violence that is going on and that is not reported in Italy or in other places. We saw George Floyd because the world was at home. And so the world watched it. But had we not been at home, it wouldn't have had the same impact. So that was fundamental. And so this is why a documentary like yours, made by women, with mainly women protagonists, is for me the epitome. So Heather, after that, Amanpour and Company came on board. USA Today talked about that. Michelle Obama talked about that. Meryl Streep. Everybody, all the most important women realized that this was real, was happening, and I supported the 19th. What did you feel about that when this happened?
As I said, that was the first day I filmed with them, was for their launch, for the first time I filmed in person. And I also filmed for several days after the launch and saw, as it was happening, all of this attention they were getting. And for me, that was really a pivotal moment to be there in person, because I just became very inspired by what they had accomplished, and very inspired by how everybody else was responding to it, and realizing how important what they were doing was. And so, like I said, that's what made me decide I really needed to continue to make the film, despite the fact that at that point I had only filmed once in person and had a bunch of Zoom meetings recorded. I just knew that I had to make it happen. And so I reached out to other people to make it happen.
What were the most important and most satisfactory moments and the most difficult ones for each one of you? Chelsea, let's start.
I think the most important moment for me was being able to be immersed in the newsroom of the 19th when the Texas abortion ban had passed, and being in Texas, it was really hopeless, and knowing that the fall of Roe v. Wade was on the horizon, to be able to capture what the reporting was like through the lens of the 19th did give me some hope, and kind of helped me with my own personal thoughts on the ban and who was going to be affected by it, women, LGBTQ plus folks. And so I knew I was in the right place to be able to be part of this film, share this story, and showcase other people reporting on this mainstream issue with a different perspective. I think one of the most challenging things of making this film is we are all in different time zones. We are a big team. It's really difficult to get our schedules pinned down and get meetings on the calendar. As well as, we are also freelance filmmakers, so we need to pay our bills and work on other projects. So that was definitely a challenge. But we all came through for the story and felt like it was really important, and worked hard to get to where we are today.
Thank you. Princess?
Yeah. Probably the most memorable moment of the film is when what relates to me the most is kind of Erin's trajectory within the newsroom, and how she's has to do the work, which often is the case for a lot of Black women, to bring up issues and bring up the tough discussions. But I love that we actually see in real time how the discussions are affecting change within this new digital news startup, how other folks are now thinking about the way that they think about something, or they've always thought about something, or now they're listening and now processing, or they come to a different agreement, or you start to just see change how they're affecting around race and gender. And so that for me resonates, because I feel like that is just such a Black person's experience. So I kind of share that lived experience through Aaron, and also just seeing what Kate has to go through and the work that they're doing. I'm constantly learning about LGBTQ plus rights and just the way we need to think about gender equity. And so that's moving to me as well. And then challenging, yeah, I'd say the challenges are having multiple voices within the creative on the film team side. When do we, when we don't agree, that's like, we have to do similar work, just like the 19th, and how we need to speak through things, and find a middle ground, find a way to move forward. We need to have a decision in the end at some point. And another challenging thing was just filming through the pandemic, ups and downs, when we can get access, when we cannot. There's a new tool, pandemic now, we're dealing with Delta or Omicron, and there's all these different levels. So those are some of the challenges as well.
Heather, what about you? What do you think?
So I think for me, the most effective moment was when I was filming with Kate Sawson. They're the non-binary LGBTQ plus reporter for the 19th. And I filmed them when they went to cover a story about trans health, which is one of the first, or is the first trans health clinic run and leadership positions by all trans people, and one of the only ones that is in a rural area as well. And that really was incredibly eye-opening to me and incredibly inspiring as well, because Kate had been covering for months this awful stories about all the state legislatures passing these anti-trans bills, and trans homicides increasing, and just in general the safety of trans people in this country diminishing. And so it meant a lot to them to be able to do this story that's a hopeful story, and it gave me a lot of hope. And also I was just blown away by the people who worked there, as well as was Kate. I mean, I felt like Kate was so touched by them, and through Kate I was very touched by them as well. And we got to meet them at the premiere, the people from Trans Health, so that was very exciting. And yeah, the difficulties, I would just ditto what Chelsea and Princess said. And whenever you're working with many different, or 2, 3, however many different creatives, you just have to learn how to listen and compromise. And but in the end, I think it made it a much better film to have us all on the team. So
That was the next question, so you just answered already. It was also because each one of you have their own opinion and ideas on how to do it, and so putting them together, it does make for the better thing, like they did at the 19th. And that is the next question, because I saw the moment in which Emily convened a meeting of all the now staff, which was increased of the 19th, and she asked them to talk about what were their problems and what they wanted to discuss and what they wanted to change. And she didn't want to be the only, like the leader alone. And I found that very interesting. And it seems to me that it changed from that moment. Again, it changed the directions of the 19th. What do you think about that, Chelsea?
So, documenting scenes of change within the 19th, their newsroom, and seeing leadership change was really important for us to include in the film as part of this story of how change happens, how tough conversations are needed in order to move the needle forward.
Yes. Heather, how do you think this movie changed from the original idea you had to what the result was in the end?
Yeah, I think actually with any documentary where you're following somebody's life as it's happening, which is what we were doing with the 19th, that it always changes. You can never predict what's going to happen, both in terms of world events and in terms of, the lives of the people you're filming. So I think as a documentarian, you have to be open to what happens in front of the camera and what happens over the years that you're filming, because you have an idea, yes, but you find the film while you're filming, and that is even more. You find the film even more when you're editing and you're cutting down all those hours of footage to. Sorry, when you're cutting down all those hours of footage to just 90 minutes.
That is a very, very difficult task. I hate editing, so I don't know how they can do it. It must be nightmarish. But Princess, as a Black woman, filming this movie in a moment in which the racial tension became so extreme, how did you feel and how precious was your contribution to it?
Sure. I think my contribution was definitely necessary. Likewise for Chelsea and Heather, for all of us to be working on this together. But as a Black woman, it was very important because it was the year of a major racial reckoning. And so the stories of like Brianna Taylor and Central Park Karen and so many others that were just targeted towards Black people, it often just gets exhausting. But on the flip side, we always have to do the work because the work won't be done. So that is the challenge of, I think, just Black people in general, is that the constant trauma that we all have to endure, but we find ways to work through it, which is not healthy, but that's just our process, right? For now, until we change that. I was also in the streets filming protests in New York. I was walking across bridges while I was working on this project and filming local activists. And we would be marching in the streets and battling police and NYPD, going to DC and all of us getting on buses and marching there to bring awareness to the racial reckoning. So, race is a big part of the film. And as the person who's Black on the film, it's just the work that we actually have to do.
Yeah. And it was also the moment in which Black Lives Matter became very important and came up to the attention of the world. So that was another pivotal moment. I mean, you, lady, made this movie in the most difficult times from that point of view in the last 100 years, because you had everything happening at the same time. We had the pandemic, and within the pandemic, it was a pandemic of the souls, of violence. It was, so this movie is really a piece of history that you've been recording. It's fundamental. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
We don't have much time left, so I'm going to ask you the last question from all of you. What would you like the audiences and the people who see this documentary take home from this movie? Let's start with Chelsea.
Sure. I hope it creates conversations around inclusion and diversity in media, but in other workplaces as well, in other industries, and I really hope people can share it within their own workplaces, whether those are private screenings that they have, and could be able to have a safe place to speak about the themes that are in the movie.
Thank you. Heather?
Yeah, I like Chelsea. I hope that the 19th can be through our film, can be a real model for other organizations, including newsrooms, but also other workplaces, to be a real model for how to make real change and how to not just give lip service to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a big thing now in a lot of workplaces, but you have to really do the work. You can't just have a single workshop and be like, okay, it's all good now. So I just hope it can be a model for other organizations to do the work and to realize that it's okay to make mistakes and to mess up and to look stupid, because that's really the only way things are going to change. And it's the only way you get to the other side. So.
And you really showed in your documentary, you really showed how important it was for the 19 to go through that, reckon that, take notice of that, and redo things. That was really, it was a conscious thing that made them real, because now they're realizing that, okay, they're falling into the trap that they're trying to show other people. And so we have to do something about that, and they did something about that. So that was really good. That point was really important. Princess?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's mainly like time for folks to do the work, right? Because there's the lip service part is the problem. You know, we went through the racial reckoning, and now we're here 3 years later, and it's like folks are trying to go back to the old norm, and that's where we're not accepting that. There needs to be actionable steps, not just discussion within organizations or changing the newsrooms. Where is the action? What are the steps everyone is going to take to make the change? It's a process. It's difficult. It's not easy. Change is not easy. Changing ways that we've been programmed all of our lives, to undo that and make new change and new ways moving forward. It's very difficult, but we have to do it. And this film shows when you do the work, it's difficult, but you get to the other side of the 19th. It's in such a different space than when they started. So that should be the model for organizations and newsrooms.
Thank you. One last question. One of you, whoever wants to answer. What is your idea for this movie next? What do you want this movie to do next? Where do you want to take it?
Well, we are a co-production of ITVS, which means we'll be on Independent Lens and PBS in the spring of 2024. And we are currently hoping we could get some theatrical distribution and be able to share the film to more cities, more towns, and bring in local and regional audiences into the conversation as well. And so we're looking for theatrical and SVOD distribution right now.
All right, ladies. Thank you so much for your time. You are at TRIBECA in this moment, and so I know that it's very, very chaotic and very difficult. So we found we're finally able to get together and do this interview. So thank you again for that. And thank you to my viewers of Harlem Portraits. See you next Saturday, 12:30, for another episode of My Harlem Portraits from TRIBECA this time, of course, from the TRIBECA Film Festival 2023. Bye-bye, ladies, and bye-bye to you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.